So there are a couple of ways that you can trace images. This is one of the ways. Go to the Object, Image Trace. So we're going to be doing the image trace exercise tonight, and you'll get a chance to see how to trace a couple of different images. The particular image that I have here came off the internet, and it is just something that I grabbed to show you a demonstration of how to trace. What's important for you to understand about this is that you could use this process to maybe do a rendering on paper, scan it in, and then trace it into a vector form that you can use in some sort of a project. Or if you're working with somebody and they aren't able to get for you an Adobe Illustrator file, but they come up with a very, very clean JPEG or some other kind of bitmap file, you can come up with a trace of that object, which will maybe make it so that you can continue working on whatever it is that you're working with. So here is one of the methods that you can trace an object. I'm going to zoom in on this a little bit so that you get a closer look at this. And I'm going to come in, and the first thing that you're going to do is you're going to select the object. So the object selected, you're going to go up to the Object menu, and you're going to come down to Image Trace, Make. And it'll automatically trace the image. Because the type of image that I have here is a very good image for tracing, I get a good result right away. But if you want, there are a number of different settings up here that you can explore. And as a matter of fact, I'm going to show you another trace in a minute where I'm going to use another one of these settings. I encourage you to go up here and play around with these settings. I'm not going to bother with that right now, but I am going to show you the image trace panel, because there's something in the image trace panel that I would like to show you, and that is the threshold. Obviously in here you can get access to these same presets, and there are different views and modes that you can work with here. And again, I would look into these, but right now we're not going to bother. What I'm going to do though is I'm going to show you a little bit about threshold. So I'm going to drag the threshold all the way over to less, and it's like 1, and you can see that it basically makes everything vanish, and it's going to pretty much stay vanish, and as you see, as I move across here, things start coming back. It's not quite good at this point, but if you get somewhere in the mid-range with this particular image, you see that you get a pretty good result out of this. So basically I can keep going across here and I can get more and more. You can see where it's getting heavier and heavier. I think it's a little too heavy here. Bring it back to about there, and I'm pretty much happy with that. Then I can go up to the Object, Image Trace, Expand. And now what I've basically done is I've expanded my image trace, and you can see now these are all vector shapes, but they're grouped. So I can go in here and go Ungroup, and now they are ungrouped, and I can select each individual shape. Now this thing, not only does it trace the black areas, but it also traces any white areas in here. So one of the things that you're going to have to do is, and I'll show you through demonstration, I'm going to send this to the back, and I'll make this a color first of all. There we go. Oh, and this is actually got to go to the color menu here. Color, and we got to change this from grayscale into, say, RGB. Object, Arrange, Send to Back, and you can see that I got all this white area, which I don't really want. So I'm going to delete that. Notice that you also get these internal areas of white, because everything gets traced. So I'm going to come in here and I'm going to pick them out by selecting, and when I get done selecting all of them, I'm not going to bother with all of them, hit delete, and they're all gone. So then I just have to clean them up. So there's your trace, and you end up with something that is very useful. So that's trace number 1. I am going to hide that, and I'm going to show you trace number 2. Trace number 2 is a little bit more difficult. This is also something that I got from the web, and it's made up of a lot of very fine lines. So one of the problems that I'm going to have with this is a lot of this is going to drop away. If I want this thing to come out looking exactly like I see it here, it's not going to happen. So I'm going to have to look at this from the standpoint of, well, maybe I can do something on in a creative direction with this and come up with some stylized versions that will work. So let's look at it from that standpoint. Go to the Object menu, come down to Image Trace again, and hit Make. I get this. completely unsatisfactory. I mean, it's almost there, but not quite. But that's where the threshold comes into play. If I click on the threshold and I start dragging the threshold over, you can see I'm starting to get more and more detail. The further I bring it over, the more detail I get. And actually, that's not too bad. I mean, I'm getting to the point where that's probably too much. I'll back off just a bit. And again, I'm probably okay right here. I might come back just a touch more. See, it's a fine point where you reach a point where it's good. I'd probably stick with it right there. So that's the first thing. The next thing is, if we come up to the presets, I wanted to show you this as well. I wanted to show you what happens if I change this to line art, because this is also quite interesting. I get this look. This could work as well, but again, what I'm going to have to do is I'm going to have to mess around with the threshold on this, and I'm going to have to bring up the detail. And I keep playing with this until I get the level of detail that I really want. And I think I could probably go a little bit more. And there you go. I'm going to stay with that because actually I think that's got some detail that I could definitely work with. Object, live, image trace, expand, and there I have expanded my image. Now, remember the setting is called line art. That's why all of these are outlines. So that's the second one. And again, the same situation. This thing is basically now turned into a grouped object. And if I wanted to, I could change the color on this by working with the stroke palette. Or, if I want, I could go into the object menu and I could go to path and I could outline the stroke. And now what I've done is I've essentially converted, let's take a closer look at this, I've actually converted those lines into a series of path objects. And I'm going to go object ungroup so that I can get a little bit more intimate with this and see all these things. Object, I still have to ungroup it. There we go. Now each one of these are individual objects. They're individual separate little objects. So then the next thing I might want to do with this is I might want to select the entire thing one at a time or in a group if I want. And I could go to the window menu and I could look for Pathfinder and I could click on Unite. And now what that did was it created one continuous shape out of this, which I could then use the fill to come in and change its color. And the reason it did not change the color is because it's still in grayscale mode. I'd have to change it down to RGB, but boom, there you go. View, fit, artboard, and window, and there is my trace. Now these objects down here, you don't want them. You just select them and hit delete. Now I've got a series of shapes that I can use. The third one that I'm going to use is the saxophone, and it's the same sort of an idea. Let me zoom in on this and you can see what it looks like. Issue with this is that the lines are probably good enough that I could use it the way it is. So if I go up to the object menu and go to image trace make, I get that, which isn't too bad. And again, I can come over here and I can play with the settings and I could, you know, make it a little bit stronger if I want. That looks pretty good. Maybe a little too much. Come back off it a bit. Back more. That's pretty good right there. So I could leave it that way. Or I could again come in here and I could try another preset. I'm going to go back and take a look at line art for this as well. And I get this look, which is also kind of interesting. Now, I don't know whether I need to come down a little bit on these lines, so I'm going to try going down a little bit because that's the other direction, and I thought I'd give that a try, see what that looks like. I'm backing off on these lines, and I think that looks pretty good. So what I'm going to do is, again, go up to the Object menu, and I'm going to go to Image Trace, and I'm going to expand it. And there I've expanded this thing, and I got a series of individual lines, which if I go to the Make Shapes for the Pathfinder, click on that, Control Z. Actually, you know what? Object, Ungroup. I think if I ungroup it first, let's see. Yeah, let's try it now. After I ungroup it, maybe that'll work. Nope, it's not. It's, let's see, what's going on with this that this isn't working? This thing, oh, I know what it is. Stupid me, I forgot a step. Object, Path, Outline Stroke. Oop, you know what? It'd be nice if I selected the whole thing. Object, path outline stroke. Okay, so first of all, before I do this, I have to make these into path objects, which are basically fills and not strokes. Now I select all of them and I click on Unite, and I get my combined shape, and it is a full shape. There it is. That is working with object path, outline stroke, and object live trace make, and the image trace panel, threshold, and presets. Thank you.